Welcome, everyone. We're going to let everyone in and start in just a few minutes. Welcome, everyone. As everyone is streaming in, we have a whole lot of folks registered today, so it's slowly creeping up. We'll give it just a minute or two to let folks in. Okay. We'll get started in just a minute. Sarah, we have something in the chat. I'm just hoping that gets addressed. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. We're so excited. We have a lot of folks registered today, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I am Tara Turrentine from the Sacramento County Office of Education. I'm going to do a few housekeeping items before we dive into content. So first, this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be shared. We will also share the PowerPoint after the webinar with you. And the chat is available for links from us, and we'll be using the Q&A for questions. So if you have questions, the Q&A is where you should put them in. It will be our goal to answer all of your questions as best that we can. Some questions we will respond to in writing. Some, if we have time, will be live between transitions, just as time allows. And at the end, we are hoping to have time for Q&A to be able to address questions as well. We will also have a survey at the end to have feedback from you, so your voice gets heard. So you'll get, all registrants will get one email that will include the recording, the PowerPoint, and the survey. I just want to highlight, you'll notice that the Project Teach team here today has backgrounds on our Zoom that represent homeless youth, National Homeless Youth Awareness Month. So we're a day away, but we decided to put those on our backgrounds so that we can highlight it for you that November is National Homeless Youth Awareness Month. And we will put in the chat where you can access these Zoom backgrounds so that you can choose to have them to bring awareness in November to youth homelessness. So I am honored to bring my Project Teach team together to present with SchoolHouse Connection, who is a national organization. And really, this is a collective effort and goal to really prioritize our youngest people who experience homelessness and advocate for their access to education. It's a huge part of what we do. So really honored to have this group today. So we're each going to introduce ourselves, and I'll go first. Again, my name is Tara Turrentine. I'm with the Sacramento County Office of Education, and I am the coordinator for the Education for Homeless Children and Youth. That is my title, and we as a collective are Project Teach. It's the name of our program here at SCOE. Okay, and so Lindsay, if you would like to go next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Curtis, and I'm a Project Specialist 1 with SCOE's Project Teach.
Good morning. My name is Kirsten Morrell. I'm a project specialist with Project Teach.
And I'll also introduce myself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Vrabik. I'm the Early Childhood Senior Program Manager at SchoolHouse Connection. Thrilled to be with you all today and partnering with the amazing SCOE team.
And Zachary, I'll have you introduce yourself as well. Via sign language. Thank you. Welcome. James Pearson is going to do technical assistance for us, and ironically, has a little bit of technical issue. So I will introduce him for us, and you will see him putting lots in the chat. Thank you, James, for all of your support. Okay, I'm going to dive right into content. You heard me say that Project Teach was the name of the program here at the Sacramento County Office of Education that we work in. And so many of you have probably seen the name Project Teach, or even seen our faces or heard our names. We work a lot in the community. We are at task force meetings for homeless youth awareness. We're on a lot of committees. As an example, I am the education board seat on the local continuum of care, or COC. We also attend and present at a lot of collaboratives within the community. So we tend to homeless education and support countywide. And this overlap that exists between housing and education leads us to partner with SchoolHouse, who will tell you a little bit more about their work. I'm not going to go over everything on the slide, but that bottom right, the technical assistance for Sacramento charters and districts is really our main activity. We have 52 local education agencies that are both districts and charters in Sacramento County, and we work to ensure that districts and charters are in compliance with homeless education. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We have 5 kind of overarching goals today in our time with you, and they are to understand the McKinney-Vento Act. I will go over that legislation briefly with you, and also for you to understand the homeless liaison role. We're going to talk about the impact of homelessness with you on families and children, and the prevalence, really some data, leave you with some hard facts information on how many folks we're talking about. Also, we want to increase your knowledge of local education programs for children ages 0 to 5, and we're going to also dive a little bit into new questions that are in HMIS. We're very excited that some advocacy work that we've done has allowed us to have new questions in HMIS that were just rolled out this week. Our last goal is to increase identification and enrollment of children ages 0 to 5. So just want to share, be transparent about our goals with you, and have those in your mind as we move forward and deliver a lot of information to you. But first, before we get going more, we want to know who's in the room. And so we have our first poll. Are you back on? Okay. Our first poll that we are probably, Sarah, if you can launch the poll, that would be great. If not, I'm happy to say it aloud. Oh, perfect. So there's a poll in front of you. So what's your role? We have a couple examples here. We also have an other category if you don't see yourself represented. And so we'll take just a second to get your answers. So
yes, hi, sorry to interrupt. This is one of the interpreters. The other interpreter as a participant, can you assign them a panelist role so that way we can swap off every 15 minutes?
absolutely. Thank you, Zachary.
Of course, thank you. And the other thing is, do you want the interpreters to show up in the recording? Because typically you have to spotlight the video feed for it to be caught in the recording. So I just wanted to double check on that.
So the first question would be the full name of the other interpreter, just so Sarah can allow her to be a panelist. And then I'm going to let Sarah, you decide as our host on the second topic. Thank you, Zachary, for bringing this.
Of course.
Zachary, would you mind letting me know the full name of the other interpreter?
Yes, it's under Jade Curtis.
Okay, let me do that first.
Because I do know there is going to be one employee who's deaf. They're not able to attend, but they still wanted the recording.
Sure. Jade is not coming up as a participant.
Is it under Heather, Morehouse, Jack? Because I know when I first joined, that's how I showed up and I had to change my name.
Okay. Okay, I just promoted Heather to a panelist.
Okay, perfect. It looks like they got it. And then as for the spotlight question.
Sure. Let me figure this out really quick.
Because typically if you want a video participant to show up, you spotlight them. And when you share your screen, that's already going to be included in the recording. But from my understanding is like right now there's 5 of us on screen. They won't show up in the recording. You'll just hear their audio unless they have a spotlight.
Okay. I'm spotlighting you right now.
And then me and the interpreter will switch off every 15 minutes. So the other option is you can give us co-host ability, and then we can spotlight and unspotlight ourselves as we swap off.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. And thank you, Zachary.
Of course. And then if whoever's the active speaker at that time, if you want to show up in the recording, because it is nice to be able to see who's actually talking, then it'd be nice to add on a second spotlight for the active speaker.
So it may take us just a minute to figure that out. We appreciate you elevating the inclusion. And I'm going to move forward with the poll. So thank you everyone for answering the poll. So we have a wide representation today. Great. So a lot of liaisons, case managers, shelters, and a lot of others. So excellent. Welcome to everybody who's here. Dive right into the McKinney-Vento Act. So some of you may have heard of the name of this legislation. In education, we have a lot of language. Doesn't every culture have lots of acronyms in their own language? So I just want to demystify a little bit of that for you. We call McKinney-Vento in education sometimes just McKinney-Vento, the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act, McKinney-Vento Act, or homeless education. For us, we kind of intertwine all of that language to be the federal law that provides rights and services for students who are experiencing homelessness in education. You'll get this PowerPoint. I've provided a link for a lot more information about that should you want to dive more into it. But for purposes of today, to give you a general overview, this McKinney-Vento Act has been around since 1987. So for 37 years in education, there has been a federal law that applies to all local education agencies that are public, and nationwide, every LEA or local education agency is required to designate a homeless liaison, and that position looks different in different schools or districts. So just to give you some context, if we have one school that's a very small school, there may be a person designated as the liaison who does 5 other jobs, right? That just may be one hat is sometimes the language we use that they wear. In a much larger district, and here in Sacramento County, we have some significantly, 3 or 4 large districts. It's often a team of people. There's always one main liaison who answers to that title, and most referrals will come through them, but it could be a team of people, sometimes some social workers, sometimes when it's if there's 65 schools, they may break that district up into multiple categories and have like a social worker assigned to a certain number of schools. So just to kind of give you that infrastructure and understand that for us at Project Teach, that's part of our advocacy is for inside of education, that we're advocating that this infrastructure exists and it's accessible to families and students. I want to give you a little more information about what the actual definition is, right? Who is homeless in education? We always, our kind of North Star is to look at this sentence and say, children are eligible when they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Again, that's Oops, I apologize. Again, that is what we're always looking to is really that nighttime residence for where students are at. On the right side, the law gives us 4 categories that we most commonly find students and children living in when we identify them. So there's often a conversation had. We have what we call a housing questionnaire that parents fill out. We're staying in this temporary arrangement. Then a conversation ensues about what that arrangement is, and we're able to categorize them into one of these 4 categories. The first one at the top, we call doubled up, and that is sharing the housing of others due to a loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason. So that's one of the first categories. The second is hotels and motels, that families who are living in that category can also encompass trailer parks or campgrounds due to a lack of alternative adequate housing. The third category is transitional shelters, and that is families or youth who are living in emergency or transitional shelters. So I know we have a lot of shelters represented today. So knowing that children and families who live in your shelter qualify and are eligible under this McKinney-Vento Act. The fourth is unsheltered. That is the last category that is the most common. And that would be living in cars, parks, abandoned buildings, substandard housing in some sort of way, bus, train stations, or a similar setting. So really unsheltered. I want to give you some hard facts or some data about when we're talking in education about children experiencing homelessness. Folks are always very surprised to know just how many students and families we're talking about. So in this slide, I'm going to start with Sacramento and get broader. So first, in Sacramento County, last school year, in the 23-24 school year, this is a number of children who are in kindergarten through the 12th grade who have experienced homelessness. So in Sacramento, we had almost 16,000 students last school year who were enrolled in kindergarten through the 12th grade. In California, and I have to go back a year because that's the most recent data available to us. In California, the year before, so the 22-23 school year, there were almost 250,000 students identified statewide as experiencing homelessness in education. And nationwide in that same year, that school year 22-23, still K through 12, there were over 1.3 million students identified. So that's why we have a Project Teach department, right? And that's why we are looking nationally, and we know that in our times right now, this number, it has been increasing, and I anticipate when the numbers come out, probably in mid-December for the state and nation for last school year, we will see an increase from these numbers. My prediction is pretty significantly. I'm going to go back to those categories for a second. For those of you who are visual learners, this is a slide that depicts that same at the top, homelessness defined, that same North Star sentence for us, right? Individuals that lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. But I have the categories on here. Cars and abandoned buildings, that will be that unsheltered category that was the last one on the slide. So that's folks who are lacking a space that's adequate. The second category would be the shelters and transitional programs. So again, we have shelters represented here today a lot, most of them here in Sacramento. And that category, children are eligible. Hotels and motels is another that can be very prevalent, especially in a larger urban setting like we're in. We have more hotels and motels. Some programs are actually in hotels and motels. I highlight the last category. It was doubled up. It's that doubled up category that there's been a loss of housing and they're staying temporarily with others. And so friends or relatives' houses have how I have it on this slide, but I put that in red for 2 reasons. The first is this is by far the most common category that we identify in education. So I'm going to say that again. By far, it's the most common category, which means in education, we have this lens to this population who is really at risk of entering into all the other categories, right? We know that families and children, it's not stagnant when experiencing homelessness. They go often from one of these categories to another. The second reason I have that box red around doubled up is because that is the category under under the education definition that is not aligned with HUD. HUD does not recognize families who are doubled up as homeless under their definition. So outside of education, the definition that is under the Department of Housing and Urban Development does not include doubled up. Just to note, in hotels, motels, there's a little bit of a caveat that families who are in a hotel or motel put there or paid for by an agency do qualify under HUD, but those who are not paid for by an agency who are self-paying at a motel are also not considered under the HUD definition. And we know lots of families are stuck in that kind of living scenario without the ability to have financial means for a deposit or first month's rent. So just to kind of put that out there. To stay with this content, when I said, I'm going to give you some more data, some more hard facts. When I said it's by far the most common category that doubled up, this pie graph shows you last year that almost 16,000 number of students in the 23-24 school year. And this shows the nighttime residents when in education we identified them as experiencing homelessness that they gave us for where they were staying at night. So you'll notice this doubled up category is 80%. Right? A very, very large number of folks that we are identifying within education. So the other 20% or it's just over 3,136 students fell into the other categories that include shelters, hotels and motels, and unsheltered. So if you're a shelter and you're looking, you see that it's about 8% of students, but about 1,263 that we're identifying and trying to connect with shelters and education to be able to make sure those students are identified and get their needs met. So now that I've talked a little bit about the definition of what McKinney-Vento is, the categories that we find students in, and some data, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the homeless liaison role and what that entails.
Tara. Hi, everybody again. Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the homeless liaisons in the world of education. As Tara covered, each school district and independent charter school are required by McKinney-Vento law to have someone designated as the homeless liaison. Okay, I'll cover what their role is, how they're already intersecting with the world of housing, and how to connect with them. Thanks, Karen. All right. So for those of you in the world of housing, this screenshot might look familiar to you. It's from the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, which some of you may be familiar with already. But if you aren't, HMIS is an online database where providers put information about individuals and families, right, experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. So people in need, for example, that call 211 or in some way request assistance are asked to do an intake, and their name and information is put into this database of HMIS. This helps other service providers because they're able to access the online system, and all the client's information and documentation are ideally already there. And they don't have to collect it all again, right? Plus, they can see a client's history, which can be very helpful. This section in HMIS asks about education status. And the last question on there, if you can see, says, is child connected to the homeless liaison? Okay, so this is part of an old question, and it has been added to. So Tara's going to show you the updates in just a minute to HMIS in this section that happened very recently. October 22nd was kind of the hopeful date. And Tara's going to talk more about that in just a moment. So you may be a service provider or have been a service provider asking this question of clients and not even knowing what a homeless liaison is. Or you may be in this webinar right now and be a homeless liaison and not have realized that this main required system asks about a child's connection to you, to a homeless liaison. But our point with this slide is to illustrate that education and housing have really always kind of been connected, because this question has actually been there for quite a while in HMIS. On our next slide here, we have what is the homeless liaison role. So we just kind of put 4 bullet points. We want to acknowledge that these are the main ones, but as Tara said, our homeless liaisons often wear many, many hats. But as a homeless liaison, these are the 4 things that are required under McKinney-Vento for them to do. So that first bullet point there says support families, children, and youth to enroll in school, including preschool. That second bullet point says, ensure students experiencing homelessness are identified at school. Next, connect families to resources. And lastly, remove barriers and uphold student rights. Our next slide has the student rights that I'm going to go over just briefly here. Thanks. All right, so as we said, the role of the homeless liaison is to advocate within their own school or schools so that students experiencing homelessness have their rights met. Under McKinney-Vento, students have these rights. I have a bullet point list: immediate enrollment, school stability or school of origin, timely transfer of records and privacy, transportation assistance, priority enrollment in after-school and preschool programs, and removal of barriers. Again, these are student rights. Students experiencing homelessness in any of those categories that Tara talked about qualify for McKinney-Vento, and these are their student rights. These are most of their student rights, okay? And the homeless liaisons help with that. So James is going to put some links in the chat. Hopefully we'll get those out to you, because obviously you can't click on this PowerPoint right now, but we will be sending it out in case you missed that at the beginning. Hopefully the past couple slides have helped you understand a little bit more about what a homeless liaison is. Again, right? Every district and independent charter school has to have somebody designated. And of course, the most important part is, how do you get in contact with them, right? How does a parent or guardian? On our Project Teach website, we have the links to the liaison contact lists, which are broken into school district, charter schools, and higher education. We have 13 school districts in Sacramento, and about 90% of our students attend a district. Okay, students in Sacramento County, about 90% of them attend a school district. But each independent charter school also has their own designated homeless liaison, and their contact information is, again, kept on our website as live links. And that's one of the things we do in Project Teach, is ensure that those links, that contact information, and those names of who the liaison is are kept up to date. So they are PDFs on our website, but it's probably best to just bookmark the link, because we do keep them live as up to date as possible. Also, a question we sometimes get is, what if you need to find out what school district a school is in, right? Or if it's a charter, if it's a district. So most of the time you can go to that school's website, and either at the top or usually the very bottom, it should say the school district. So that's one way you could find out. We're also going to send out a link to CDE, the California Department of Education, and that will hopefully also kind of help you identify which district or charter that school is in, so that you can find that homeless liaison. So now we're going to make a shift to focusing on children, specifically ages 0 to 5, right? But we have one more poll before we hand it off to Sarah. And our poll is going to come up with, have you supported families with young children under age 6 experiencing homelessness? So if you can just take a moment. Yes, no.
That's an intended question.
All right. So again, have you supported families with young children under age 6 experiencing homelessness? We have a poll up. If you can mark yes or no.
We have about 75% participation at this point. I'll give it a couple more seconds.
Thanks, Sarah. Mhm. Oh, great. We have a lot of yeses. About 87% of people who just answered this poll in our webinar, have you supported families with young children under age 6 experiencing homelessness, said yes. Okay, that's kind of what we expected here. That's amazing that so many are supporting, but I would imagine it's, we know that that role is very difficult at times. And we also know that there are many more families with school-age children than are being represented in our system, right? So we're super happy to have SchoolHouse Connection with us today. They're joining us for this advocacy to help us understand the impact on this young population better. So now I'm going to hand it off to Sarah.
Great, thank you so much. And sorry, I'm going to click through the slides here. If you bear with me a moment. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great. I have a little bit of delay on the slides, but here we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Sarah Vrabik, and I'm the Early Childhood Senior Program Manager at SchoolHouse Connection. We are a national nonprofit working to overcome homelessness through education, all the way from prenatal to post-secondary. And we do this by providing practical assistance and strategic advocacy, partnering with early childhood institutions, institutions of higher ed, schools, service providers, families, youth, and of course, similar to what we're doing today, we're partnering with Project Teach and SCOE to deliver this webinar for you all. I encourage you to check out our website so you can stay up to date on all of our latest federal and state policy advocacy. You can see all of our implementation tools, resources. We also post all of the questions that we receive along with detailed responses. So chances are, if you're having a particular issue in your work or a challenge, someone in another community has probably experienced something similar, and you can utilize those questions and answers as knowledge and resources for you. I also have to mention we are incredibly proud of our network of youth scholars. So this is a program where we support students along their collegiate journeys who either have experienced homelessness in the past or who are currently experiencing homelessness. We support them through financial scholarship and case management. So if you are currently working with high school students and this program sounds like it may be a good fit for them, please explore our website to learn how to apply and learn more. So today I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into how homelessness can impact young children. So prenatally through age 5. And then I'll also talk about some national and state data on the prevalence of homelessness among this population of young children, and then some strategies to increase the identification and enrollment of these young children. So I wanted to note, and this first statistic comes from our national partners at 0 to 3, that just over 15% of infants and toddlers in our country live in crowded housing. And this kind of circumstance is known to jeopardize child development. Tara talked a little bit about this earlier today, but what this can look like for particularly young children is living in an environment that they may not have regular access to kitchen facilities, so there may be some food insecurity. They may not have regular access to bathroom facilities, which can be really challenging if a toddler is learning how to use the bathroom, is trying to be potty trained. It can also look like not every child in a family having a bed. It can look like the environment not being a space where children can be safely on the floor to learn to crawl, to safely explore, to participate in imaginative play with their siblings and caregivers. All of these things that are crucial for healthy development and for brain growth in the earliest years. Young children experiencing homelessness can often find themselves in environments that are not conducive to that. And I also wanted to point out that pregnancy is one of the greatest risk factors for youth experiencing homelessness. It's the second highest risk factor, second only to lacking a high school diploma. And high school students who experience homelessness are 10 times more likely to become pregnant or to get someone pregnant. And often those pregnancies will result in infants being born into a circumstance of homelessness. Just last year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development reported a 16% increase in families experiencing homelessness needing shelter services. And this is a significant increase. So imagine if we considered in this analysis all of the different circumstances that Tara mentioned earlier of how we qualify experiencing homelessness in the education system. I also wanted to note that our partners at the Eviction Lab out of Princeton University recently reported that babies are actually the age group at greatest risk of eviction in this country. You are most likely to experience homelessness and be in need of housing support services as an infant. And if you're interested in learning more about that research, SchoolHouse Connection did a webinar with the Eviction Lab earlier this year. It's archived on our website if you'd like to learn more. Homelessness, as we know, can have serious consequences for young children. Like I mentioned, it can lead to developmental delays, social emotional development, in literacy, and in language. It also can lead to a greater cumulative toll of negative health outcomes. And even once families are stably housed, we see that an experience of homelessness in the earliest years can have long-lasting impacts, particularly on children's school readiness. And this top bullet is probably one of the more significant pieces of evidence we have of this impact, that the high school graduation rate for students experiencing homelessness is 68%. And this is compared to 85% for all other students. We also know that high school students who have experienced homelessness, even if they are stably housed, if they have that experience in their past, they are significantly more likely to be in need of mental health services and supports. So one of the things that we know can help mitigate these potential negative impacts and consequences is access to and regular participation in high-quality early childhood developmental programs. But it can be challenging for families experiencing homelessness to access these programs. Typically, they're highly mobile. We talked about that when we first started our webinar together today. Because of this high mobility, they may not have on hand the usually necessary documents that you would need to enroll your child in a program. They may not have reliable access to transportation, and in their community, the providers that are available simply may not know the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness, all of the different circumstances that it encompasses that would make families eligible for services, and some programs may not understand the best ways to remove these kinds of barriers for families experiencing homelessness. But like I mentioned, it's critical that we work together to remove those barriers. Early childhood is a critical period of development. The most rapid brain growth occurs in those earliest years. And the research shows us that even children who are experiencing homelessness, if we promote protective factors in their life that help them stay on a healthy trajectory of development, they can perform as better and sometimes even better than their housed peers later in life academically, despite that early experience. And those protective factors we know are responsive, positive, and nurturing relationships, both with their caregiver and other close adults in their life, and participating in high-quality early childhood development programs. Because when a young child is experiencing homelessness, think about what their day could look like. It could look like periods of stress in the family. It could look like waking up and not knowing where they might lay their head at night that coming night. It can be a lot of uncertainty, but if they are participating in a high quality early childhood development program, that can be the consistency. That can be the structured environment, the nurturing environment that's safe for them to play and explore and to learn. That can make all the difference for helping them stay on that path of healthy development despite the other uncertainty that exists within their life in that time. So what is early childhood? Here on the slide, I have all of the different programs that are available to young children. I have it broken out by age for your knowledge. And I also want to point out that the top 3 bullets, McV, Home Visiting, Early Head Start, and Head Start, those programs specifically operate under a 2-generational model of service delivery. So not only is the young child receiving services and care, but the caregiver is also benefiting from these programs. I know a lot on this slide, but I also wanted to show that all of these programs have federal requirements to prioritize young children experiencing homelessness, both in terms of identification and in terms of enrollment. Families experiencing homelessness are categorically eligible for Early Head Start and Head Start programs, meaning they can automatically be enrolled if that program has a slot available, and they receive grace periods for submitting that enrollment documentation. I'm not going to go through each of these. I encourage you to explore these in your own time, but I also want to point out, because we talked about this a little bit, family housing support programs that receive funding from HUD are required to designate a staff person that ensures that young children, including infants and toddlers, are enrolled in early childhood programs. So I know we have a wide variety of participants in our audience today. We have staff from housing support programs. We have staff from early childhood development programs. We have McKinney-Vento liaisons. All of your programs have requirements to prioritize this population of young children experiencing homelessness. So we all have a shared responsibility in this work. So it is so important that we get to know each other and we form partnerships and we do exactly what we're doing here today, joint training and learning together so we can better identify this population and better bring to them the services that they need and deserve. Just quickly, I wanted to point out how Early Head Start and Head Start programs prioritize young children experiencing homelessness specifically. They can reserve up to 3% of their program slots for these children. They must include data on these children in their community needs assessment and locate and recruit these children within their community. So again, that shared responsibility for identification and enrollment. So now I will move into some data, and I know I'm moving pretty quickly. We have a lot to get through today, but I promise we'll have time for questions and answers. Across the country, through our analyses, we know there are approximately 600,000 children under age 6 experiencing homelessness. Just over 21% of those children are identified and served by a program. And for our analyses, we were able to receive data from Early Head Start and Head Start, those children that were identified and served by their local education agency program, and then children who participated in Parents as Teachers or Healthy Families America Home Visiting. So we know that just under 80% of children experiencing homelessness across the United States are not identified or enrolled in a program. And we just talked about the potential negative consequences that lack of participation can have, and the potential benefits that regular participation can have in early childhood developmental program. So we must work together and we must do more to better identify and serve this population. Zooming in on that critical period of development of infants and toddlers, we estimate there are 364,390 infants and toddlers experiencing homelessness, and only 11% are identified and served. That means the vast majority of children who are in this critical period of development who are experiencing homelessness are not being reached. And this is what really keeps our team up at night. We have to do more. We have to get these children connected to the services that they qualify for, and that will help them stay on that path of healthy development. I'll just quickly move through some enrollment stats. because it's nice to see, to compare your state to the rest of the country. So across the country, Head Start and Early Head Start enroll an estimated 9% of children, while local education agencies serve an estimated 10.5% of children experiencing homelessness. For that birth to 3 population, Early Head Start serves around 5%, home visiting just over 2%, and then local education agencies serving an estimated 4.2% of infants and toddlers experiencing homelessness. And on this slide, I have a snapshot from a report that SchoolHouse Connection released earlier this year. It was our 50-state analysis of infants and toddlers experiencing homelessness. So we did a data profile that looks just like this for each state. And you can see in California, there are approximately 55,187 infants and toddlers experiencing homelessness, with 9,685 of those children participating in a program. You can see on the bottom right corner that we have it broken out, those participation rates. So the majority of children in California are actually identified and served by their LEA and participating in Early Head Start, those that are identified. And so we can see that there's some potential and room for growth there for those home visiting programs. On the bottom left-hand corner, I want to bring your attention. These are state policies, and whether your state endorses these policies for prioritizing children experiencing homelessness. You can see California endorses most of these policies, but does not waive co-payments for parents experiencing homelessness. So if you have opportunities for advocacy in your work, this is a great place to start. Perhaps you can have more trainings on why it's important for these co-payments to be waived, and it's an opportunity for additional advocacy in your community.
So I'm going to hop back in. In the middle of Sarah's slides, I apologize, and give you a little bit of information about children, some data about children ages 0 to 5 locally in Sacramento County. As Sarah mentioned in her previous slide, local education agencies only serve about 10.5% of children ages 0 to 5. So that's a very large statistic. I'm really proud that in Sacramento County, we have worked very, very hard to increase identification, including webinars like these, of children ages 0 to 5. Part of the reason is when COVID hit, and so you'll notice on this slide in 2020, 2021, we identified 775 students. That was over a 50% decrease from the year before. So we know that the identification of children ages 0 to 5 dramatically decreased due to COVID. Interestingly, there's not another agency locally who is tracking all children ages 0 to 5 experiencing homelessness besides education. And the only other place I know about is HMIS, or the Homeless Management Information System, that's tracking countywide. So we have really, again, tried to increase. And so we have done a lot of different activities, and over the last few years, steadily increased. You'll notice that we're even above numbers before COVID. In this last 2023-24 school year, we're at 18,100 children. And we get these numbers by asking enrolled kindergarten through 12th grade students, their parents, if there are other siblings in the home who are aged 0 to 5. We also, Project Teach, reach out annually when we do this data report to Head Start and Early Head Start programs for their identified students, including local preschool LEA programs. So that is how we get this total number, to do our best to track and capture how many children ages 0 to 5 are in Sacramento County. So I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
Thanks, Tara. Thank you for showing that important local data. All right, now I will briefly flow through some strategies for increasing identification and enrollment. And one of those strategies is exactly what we are doing here together today, talking about the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness and how it impacts young children and their families. So I encourage you to take the information we're talking about today and bring it into your program, having regular conversations and trainings about it. Also, collaborating with other partner agencies. It's wonderful that we have such a robust and diverse audience with us today. Keep that momentum going. If you are a shelter provider, invite your local early childhood development programs into your shelter for enrollment events, for opportunities for the families that you're serving to meet the staff of those programs, to learn about them, and potentially enroll their children. So it's just so important that we're all working together because that is how we increase enrollment. Also, improving data collection, of course, that's always important because once we have a more accurate understanding of the scope of something, we can better target our service delivery. And then advocating, like I mentioned before, whenever you can, to continue removing barriers to access for families experiencing homelessness. Tara just mentioned how critical it is to ask about younger children in a family. For liaisons, this is a requirement within the McKinney-Vento statute to ask about these younger children. And we're going to talk today about how improvements are being made to the HMIS system so that that system can do the same. SchoolHouse Connection has also developed a checklist for McKinney-Vento liaisons specifically to make referrals for younger children. So I have that linked on this slide, and I believe we'll also share it in the chat as well. And that's a really nice step-by-step checklist on how to identify these younger siblings and get them connected to programs. I also encourage you to develop your own outreach materials, advertising your program, advertising what is early childhood, how homelessness can impact young children, and just posting them wherever families frequent. So that's grocery stores, it's laundromats, it's libraries. You know your community best. You know where these families are going to get their needs met. So just making sure that this conversation stays relevant and a part of conversations. And then, of course, whenever possible, developing those formal partnerships like MOUs. I already mentioned the importance of collecting data, but we want to also emphasize lifting up parents' voice. So parents experiencing homelessness, they are the expert of their experience. So if your program is interested in improving your policies, make sure that you, whenever you can, are bringing parents with lived experience to the table to influence that decision making. They know what it's like to experience homelessness in your community. I am quite sure that they have ideas to best improve those systems. So make sure that their voices are elevated first and that they always have a seat at that table. And if you're interested in learning ideas for how to best do that, I'm happy to participate in those conversations. If you're a shelter provider, I wanted to link to the Administration for Children and Families has an assessment tool to assess how well your shelter environment serves young children, specifically children under age 5. In my previous role prior to SchoolHouse, I did a lot of this in the city of Philadelphia with shelter providers, assessing their environment, making improvements to make them more developmentally friendly. It's a really great process and self-reflection. So again, if anyone has additional questions about that, I'm happy to help. And then, of course, we all want more money to better serve this population of young children. So let's say you have some additional funding left over. Think about, what can we do? Maybe we can create a transportation fund to support children experiencing homelessness and getting to their preschool program every day. Thinking about ways in which we can better support this population. I know I went through all of that quite quickly, so I'm happy that there's a Q&A portion at the end. Now I will stop sharing and launch our next poll. Thank you everyone for all of your participation so far. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So again, we do have another poll up, everybody, and this one's a little bit kind of a quick quiz based on what we've already covered. So if you'd like, I'll give you a minute to read through those questions, read all the questions before you answer, all the options, and then we'll go over that in just a moment. Okay. So I think a lot of our folks hopefully got a chance to answer our poll. What the question was, what can we do in Sacramento to meet the goal of increasing identification and enrollment of children ages 0 to 5? So the good thing about this little pop quiz was there are no wrong answers. Okay, so connecting to a homeless liaison, asking parents about children ages 0 to 5, increasing collaboration in the community, and increasing awareness of McKinney-Vento, the definition of homelessness among staff and families are all great answers, but the answer was right, all of the above. You can do any of those to help us meet the goal of increasing identification and enrollment in education programs. So thank you to everyone who answered. I'm going to hopefully, yeah, perfect. I just have a couple slides really fast for folks about Project Teach's Shelter Outreach Program, which is one of my favorite things of Project Teach. Sarah just spoke about the importance of connecting children ages 0 to 5 to education programs and what an impact that can make on the rest of their lives. So in order to really make connections between education and housing, at Project Teach, we have our Shelter Outreach Program, which has 3 goals that I have here on our slide. The first is to strengthen relationships between education and housing systems. Our second goal is to connect homeless liaisons and Help Me Grow advocates. Help Me Grow works with those ages 0 to 5 to local shelters. And also, one of our goals is to inform shelter agencies and their parenting residents of their rights under McKinney-Vento. We found that making sure the liaison or Help Me Grow advocate is connected closely with the shelters in their areas or districts makes a huge difference, not only in forefronting the importance of education for shelter residents, but making sure it's as easy as possible to access those people and services. If they already met that person and can just call them up or contact them, that's just one more barrier that's hopefully reduced. So how do we actually make that connection, right? How do we meet these goals? What that connection actually looks like is what we have on this slide here. Shelter staff trainings, shelter resident presentations, including the homeless liaison and Help Me Grow advocates, right, in our work. And giving posters and brochures. So something visual, tangible that shelter residents and shelters can have. We've outreached to every shelter in Sacramento to hopefully connect them with the necessary people, give them materials, whatever's needed. What this looks like in actual practice can be, say, us contacting a shelter that isn't already connected with their homeless liaison, asking if we can come visit, speaking with staff, shelter staff about McKinney-Vento, and then doing a full staff or shelter resident presentation or training. Sometimes the shelter isn't even aware what school district they're located in. So we can help answer that for them and connect them with the homeless liaison. Ideally, we're able to come give a training to a shelter and the residents about their children's rights and what services are available to them. And my favorite trainings are the ones where the homeless liaison and the Help Me Grow advocate come with me, the 3 of us, so that we can make those connections as best as possible. You may also have seen us at Project Teach at places like Frontline Learning Collaborative, PACE conferencing, Continuum of Care or COC committees, anywhere where in the world of housing where it makes sense to include a connection to education, to really strengthen that connection. And now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Kirsten, who's going to talk to you about early learning programs in Sacramento County.
Good morning, everyone. Throughout this presentation, you've heard a lot of information, how homelessness impacts children 0 to 5 and why connection to early learning programs is vital. Early learning programs are often the child's first experience in an educational environment. And in this environment, there are trained staff who document their growth and development, and it is through that process that delays are identified. So I just want to reiterate that this is one of the reasons why we're doing this, is to get identification, connection, and service. So I'm going to talk to you about early learning programs in our county. We have federal programs. Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, otherwise known as SETA, is our county's federal program. They have early Head Start and Head Start. They offer center-based programs and home-based programs. Here at SCOE, we also have an early Head Start program. Our program at SCOE is primarily home-based. These programs are free to families who are eligible. Head Start and Early Head Start have adopted the federal definition of McKinney-Vento and have incorporated them into their performance standards. In their program, children experiencing homelessness are categorically eligible. We briefly talked about this in Sarah's slides. They receive priority enrollment. Staff help remove barriers. They provide extra time to gather documentation, and they reserve 3% of their spots for children experiencing homelessness. When you refer a family to Early Head Start, children will participate in learning experiences that promote their growth and development. They will engage in activities in nutrition, language and literacy activities, physical development. Staff also assist families with connecting to agencies in our community for other support. And you'll notice that next to Early Head Start, it has 0 to 3. That is because Early Head Start offers a prenatal program to expecting parents. So if you're working with a family that is expecting, you can refer them to Early Head Start to get prenatal services, which is, I can't even emphasize how important that is to families in our community. In Early Head Start home-based, you will have a home visitor that will meet the family where they are at. This means they travel to the family's home, libraries, parks, McDonald's, even shelters. They meet the family where they are at. They visit the families once a week for about 90 minutes. The activities are done with the parent to promote their role as the child's first teacher. In Head Start for children 3 to 5, these programs provide opportunities for children to learn math, science, art, language, and culture. Head Start provides children with activities that prepares them for kindergarten. They're excited to learn and they want to go to school. Oftentimes when you refer to Head Start or Early Head Start, the programs are full. There may be a wait list. If that is the case, we don't want you to give up. We want you to look at state-funded programs. Sacramento County has Beanstalk. Beanstalk has a variety of options for families. They have a toddler program. Their toddler program helps children ages 2 to 3. They have center-based programs, and they have a family child care network. In their family child care network, they have 168 individual licensed providers who serve families throughout Sacramento County. If families are interested in their family childcare, they receive a list. Family childcare providers are categorized by zip code. So the family would look at the list, go to the zip code where they want care, and they would go interview those providers. The family chooses the provider that best suits their needs. And then finally, we have Child Action. Child Action is Sacramento County's resource and referral agency. They have a variety of childcare options as well. The next slide talks about how to access early learning programs. And on the slide, I have a live link to the website for each program and where to apply. It's very user-friendly. And I would encourage everyone to go to the website where they can read more detailed information about the program and how to apply. For Child Action, families need to create a CEL account. CEL stands for Child Care Eligibility List. They create the account, they submit it, and then someone from that agency will contact them and offer assistance to connection to a program. I've also included Child Action's location and contact information. Families can call and speak to a staff member over the phone, and they can also go there in person. On our next slide, we're going to talk about developmental focused programs in Sacramento County. As previously talked about, children experiencing homelessness are at higher risk of having one or more developmental delays, which makes connection to these programs necessary to set up their future success. We know that 75% of preschoolers who are homeless have at least one major developmental delay, and 40% of preschoolers have 2 or more developmental delays. So these programs are important. I have on here SCOE's Infant Development Program and Alta Regional of California Birth to 3. Both of these programs are very similar. They both provide services for children birth to 3. They support families with children that have an identified delay. So if you have a concern, you would refer. You would receive an assessment, and if the child is eligible, services may begin. A reason for a referral would be a child is, let's say, 10 months old, they're not sitting up or they're not crawling. You would refer, the assessment would be done, and eligibility would be determined. So on here, I have the links to their program. You can read in more detail about what they do and how to apply. Also on the slide, I have Alta Regional of California for children ages 3 and over. This program requires a diagnosis of a developmental disability. A developmental disability is an intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and some other intellectual disability. If a family has a concern without a diagnosis, they can submit a referral for an assessment, and if they're eligible, services may begin. So let me give you an example. Say a family has a concern, their child has autism. Maybe the doctor has mentioned it to their family and has referred them to Alta. They would refer, Alta would provide the necessary assessments and evaluation. And if a disability was determined, services would start. Services are provided on a case-by-case basis and are individualized based on the diagnosis. For Alta Regional over 3, we do not refer to that program for speech or other learning disabilities. This is specifically for diagnosed developmental disabilities. And we're going to talk about school districts on the next slide. That's where you would refer children for speech or learning disabilities. Referrals to school districts are for children ages 3 or older or 45 days before their 3rd birthday. If you are doing a referral to the school district, the best thing to do is to contact the homeless education liaison. They are aware of McKinney-Vento. They know who to contact within their district to receive support. Referrals, like I said, here are for things like speech and other developmental delays. However, like I mentioned in the last example of the child with autism, children with diagnosed developmental disabilities can also refer to the school district. They oftentimes receive assistance through Alta and the school district. It's a dual service for them. So I just want to note that even though a child does qualify for Alta, they are often referred to the school district for extra support. And if that's not overwhelming to you, because it is to me, and I've been doing this for 20 years, there is light at the end of the tunnel. So welcome to SCOE's Help Me Grow. This is a great option for families, especially families experiencing homelessness, because they are often in crisis. Family advocates, well, let me back up. Help Me Grow serves families in Sacramento County from birth to age 5. The family advocates also travel to meet the family where they are at, meaning their home, a shelter, the park, the library. The family advocate's job is to do a screening to determine the child's growth and development. The result of that screening determines next steps. Maybe the child needs to be connected to an early learning program, or maybe the screening indicates there's a possible risk of a developmental delay. The family advocates do all the work. They support the parent and you, the provider, from referral to assessment to service. They are able to go to doctor's appointments. They're able to go to assessments. They're able to go to IEP meetings, whatever the family needs, they are there to support them. So this is a great option to alleviate some of that stress that they are already having. I have made a resource list that includes all the links on these slides. James is going to put them in the chat. You can download them and refer to them as needed based on the families that you are serving. And lastly, on Project Teach's website, we have a link specifically dedicated to children 0 to 5. We also have a community resource list with resources for children 0 to 5. So please check that out. I think James is also going to put that in the chat for you. And if anybody has a specific question regarding early learning programs or the referral process, I'll have James put my email in the chat, and you can contact me privately. We want to honor confidentiality for the family and children that we serve. And my biggest takeaway for you guys today is that you have a broader awareness that identification plus connection equals services. And that's really important for our population here in Sacramento County. So I'm going to hand it over to Tara. I believe we're going to do another poll, and then Tara will talk about HMIS.
Thank you so much. Such great information. I'm so lucky to be on, and such a great team of folks who are working hard for children. We are, I think, caught up on questions in both the Q&A and in the chat. We're going to do two questions in the last poll, and I will kind of rein us in with the last section of HMIS. So we have this poll in front of us, and we're going to shift to questions about HMIS. So do you enter data into the Homeless Management Information System? Just a simple yes or no. And then in HMIS, have you seen the new questions about children ages 0 to 5? So while you're answering that question, I'm going to say part of our advocacy has been to increase the identification in HMIS of children ages 0 to 5 and really of all students. So this information about HMIS will be good to know even if you don't enter into HMIS. And I really envision, just like us all, to vision it together, a time when housing and education are connected and using HMIS together to support referrals for families. So if you have answered 1 and 2, yes or no, we'll give it about 10, 15 more seconds. And we have a lot of shelters and housing folks on today. I suspect this could be high. Yeah. Okay, so yes, we have a lot of folks who do input, and a lot of folks haven't seen these questions yet. So what I will say as I head into these new questions into HMIS is, I know that there was a recertification for CAS providers on the 22nd of October. We also, I say we, I'm on the Continuum of Care Board, launched the Housing Conversation Tool. And so I know there was a shift. Folks kind of lost access and have been regaining access since. So let me tell you where they are in case you newly have access and you're trying to figure out where new stuff is. So on the next slide, I'll show you this is sort of a snapshot of all of the questions that are about education in HMIS, and they live in the program enrollment section. And so the top questions in education status have been in HMIS for a period of time. Lindsay said that earlier. She talked a little bit about what Homeless Management Information System is. And so these questions have already lived there. We've tweaked them just a little bit, but the bottom questions are our new questions. So I'm first going to talk about the questions that have already existed and then come back to these new questions. So on the next slide, the education status questions, when you populate yes or no, have more questions that come up. So this is one example. When you say yes to if a child or student is currently enrolled in school, that's the larger red arrow, that's yes. The smaller 2 arrow, these 2 questions populate because you said yes. So then it asks you the name of the school and the type of school. So Lindsay talked about how to figure out if which district a school is in, but the school is what is asked for in HMIS. On the next slide, if you answer no to currently enrolled in school, the 2 questions that populate, the smaller arrows, are the last date of enrollment. And just to say, we get this a lot when we're between summer and the next school year. Maybe they were only enrolled at the end of the last school year, right? But then the last question is really important, the barriers to enrolling a child in school. So this will populate if you answer no to currently enrolled. I want to show you a little bit on the drop-down menus for barriers to enrollment. Here are some of the barriers that you can choose from. And when I said let's vision a world where education and HMIS are connected, these barriers are something that together we can overcome in a variety of ways. I'll just use a couple examples. Birth certificates, for example, right? That may be something that a parent doesn't know their right to enroll without a birth certificate, their child in school, or you may be a housing provider who has a birth certificate for a child and can provide it to that parent to just make it easier for them and remove that barrier for enrollment. Lack of available preschool programs. You just had Kirsten give you sort of all in a nutshell of what's available. Now we may have bigger ideas, right? We might have more awareness of what programs exist. You could give that 1-pager to a parent, and you could even help remove that barrier, right? Connecting to a liaison can be another way. Immunization requirements, that could be the barrier. They can enroll without immunizations, but in addition, we're working with the public health department, and they have a new unhoused pediatric initiative to immunize children who are experiencing homelessness, and we are working to have them go to where the populations who need them are. So, and even come to schools and immunize children. So again, these are a lot of barriers that if you communicate to a liaison when referring a parent, or tell the parent to tell the liaison these barriers, it's just good information. For all of the information Sarah said on why it's important for a child to be connected to a program, we can remove these barriers together. You may not be the person doing an intake, but you can actually access all of the answers to these questions as well, right? That's highly important. So the last slide are new questions. I just want to pause for a minute on our new questions. So these questions really are focused on children ages 0 to 5. Because it asks about Head Start programs, which we know are preschool, LEA preschool programs, then home visiting programs are also things like early Head Start and other home visiting programs. Childcare can be ages 0 to 12 really, but we are asking bigger questions. The good news is if you are doing the intake and you're having a conversation with a parent, these are having us finally look at children ages 0 to 5 who were largely ignored in our system, or invisible, shall I say invisible in our system, because we were mostly asking about school age children. Kind of didn't matter if they were ages 0 to 5, there weren't services that we were putting in. So for some context, what happened previously and could still happen if we aren't asking about children ages 0 to 5, if there's a record of a parent and we didn't add in HMIS a child ages 0 to 5, it's not as simple as just adding that child now that you know they have one. You'd actually have to take away the record for that parent, create a whole new record to add the 0 to 5 child. So again, we're trying to have these questions be center and forefront so that we have children ages 0 to 5 focused on. And we know if you ask these questions and we make these connections, that this will lead to better success for our children as they navigate through school. Being connected to a preschool, as Sarah talked about, or early education program dramatically increases their trajectory of success as they move forward in school. So just to recap, our goal of how can housing providers identify children, right? What can you do if you're a housing provider? Connect to homeless liaison. I know we've said it many, many times. That really is one of the things in our forefront. Ask about children when conducting that HMIS intake, like I just talked about, and also just ensuring that that data in HMIS is accurate for children. Also giving parents resources for early education programs so that one pager from Kirsten today, you having a better awareness can just start that conversation. And the last thing is to post student rights. This is something that I'm hoping you already know about. As Lindsay talked about in our shelter outreach program, we have provided brochures and posters to all shelters across Sacramento. All schools post these rights. These rights are posted on our housing questionnaires. So as Marjorie asked in the chat, that we can really educate parents on what their rights are to remove those fears and barriers, but to see that actually this is helping students and the whole family when they reveal. And so on the next slide, we at Project Teach want to leave you with all of the resources that we have and provide. We have this poster on the left side. Remember, you will get this PowerPoint, so all of these things are linked for you for ease. James will also put them in the chat for us so you have them. But we have a poster. We also have a brochure on the bottom right corner, and that lists the different liaisons to districts within the county. And we also have created awareness videos that the audience intended is for parents and youth who are experiencing homelessness. We have them produced in both English and produced in Spanish. We have these on our website. They're a YouTube link, so you could actually put them on your website if you're a housing provider. You can just share them with parents. You can show the videos at your shelter to parents. This is just another vehicle. You can put it on your email signature that these are rights for children in school. So we just do everything to try to advertise, create awareness for what rights are for parents. And I know that I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. She has a couple of slides about resources that she will leave you with. And then we'll have a couple of minutes. If there are any more questions, I know we're kind of caught up otherwise. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tara. So these will be linked for you all in the slide. It's just links to the infant and toddler 50-state analysis that I mentioned, some case studies of programs that do a really great job supporting infants and toddlers experiencing homelessness. It's also a link to our data profiles, which is a really helpful dashboard that we have both for children and youth, so prenatal to grade 12, experiencing homelessness across the country. So those rates of children experiencing homelessness, their rates of enrollment in early childhood programs and in school, but we are able to break it down by state, by county, and by school district. So it's just another tool in your toolbox for supporting this population of children. And then some other practical strategies for serving this population of young children. And on the next slide, just a few more resources about what is a preschool within your LEA. We have a flow chart there, and just some other ways to increase your awareness and knowledge. And then I think on the next slide, we'd love for you to connect with us with SchoolHouse Connection. These are all of our different platforms. And we also have a community on Slack. So we encourage you to join that. It's a way to connect with us as a staff, but then also peers in your different service areas, but around the country. And I think there might be one other slide to join our mailing list and our newsletter. This is how you can stay up to date on our latest webinars, resources, advocacy, and all other updates related to education and homelessness. So please join our community.
So I think our attempt was to answer all the questions in the Q&A, and I believe that we did that. There's none outstanding that I'm aware of, and anyone else can let me know if I've missed something. So we have a survey that I know James will put in the chat that we would love your feedback about this webinar. And we do have a minute or two if there is a live question that somebody would like to ask. And I believe, Sarah, you could unmute them if that's the case.
Yes, I can unmute them. I do see that there is one audience member with their hand raised. Lupe. I don't know if there is still a question there. I will allow them to talk.
Sorry, that was on accident.
Oh, that's okay. No problem.
That happens to all of us. No worries. Well, on our next slide are all of our emails. And so I think James will also put them in the chat. So if you want to reach out to us individually, you're welcome to. I really want to say thank you so much to everyone for all of the work we do collectively to support our youngest people who are experiencing homelessness. Really, we all do a lot of work, and that advocacy to just have a better system available to families that flow through our system in Sacramento is a shared goal. So thank you to all the work that you do, whether shelter providers, homeless liaisons, any of the other, whatever your role is. We really appreciate you and are proud to work with you on this goal. Unless we have any other hand raised, Sarah, I'll look to you. Anybody has anything else?
There's nothing else. Okay. I just want to say thank you so much for letting SchoolHouse join you on this important webinar today. This Project Teach team is truly remarkable and incredible. So everyone on the call, you all are in great hands. So I'm very happy to be with you all today.
Thank you, Sarah. We're so grateful for you elevating the importance of 0 to 5 and for all of the work SchoolHouse Connection does. Okay, well, thank you. Everyone have a great day.